This is my quilt, Fancy Trip Around the World. And I made it as a class sample for our quilt retreat where the subject was Trip Around the World. I found a picture in one of my antique quilt book pictures of this design, and that was my inspiration. I created it with our great little technique of cutting out little squares and sewing them together with a grid. The interesting thing about this quilt is how I quilted it, because when you look at quilts like this and trying to decide how to quilt them, it's tricky because there's a lot of seam allowance under there. They're 1/2-inch finished squares, so it's completely covered with seam allowance underneath. So I decided to just quilt straight lines diagonally through the little squares, and then when I got to the outer border, I changed what I was doing and did some straight lines, and then I used a decorative stitch on my sewing machine just to create a little bit of interest. So choosing the colors for this, I was kind of inspired by the antique quilt. So that's kind of what I went with. And I actually think adding black in there is a really good contrast, and it makes the other colors kind of pop out a little bit. It's kind of the gradation of colors, right? So you've got the light gradually becoming darker and darker, and that makes you kind of look in, and you see, it looks like there's layers going on. So a really great thing about this technique is that it allows you to make adjustments because you're paying attention to that little bit stretchy cross grain. So if there needs to line up with the two seams, you are able to make that adjustment, and it helps the quilt look like you have perfect intersections.
The joy of unlimited quilting. The B790 Pro lets you easily customize quilt designs with unlimited scaling and setting of stitches per inch.